that would double up as a place to sleep if needs be, where all bar 6 seats had been removed. Jack, it's great to see you, and thank you very much indeed for joining us live from Ukraine. Can you say safely where specifically you are, or would you rather not?
No, I can say at the moment I'm in an area called Poltava, which until recently was relatively untouched by the war. But last night there were explosions and air raid sirens going off. And actually about 20 minutes ago, there's been sirens too, as Putin's targeting more areas around Ukraine. I think certainly in response to the attack on the Russian warship. We're in Kharkiv yesterday as well, dropping off essential aid to vulnerable people, particularly elderly people. And you know, it was a real experience, I think. We had explosions going off around us. We could feel the impact of the explosion, like in your teeth rattle as the bombs hit. Again, we had body armor on, and we were asking the locals, why aren't you wearing any protection? Why aren't you running away? And they said they're fed up of running away and hiding in basements, but at night they sleep in the basement. But they wish they had body armor. They wish they had something to defend against the missiles.
Jack, let me just interrupt very briefly, because while you were explaining that about the body armour, what have you, with folk who were listening to this conversation on radio rather than watching on telly, we were showing some pictures of local folk of various age groups, and the joy and relief on their faces is crystal clear. Going to turn that completely on its head and ask what Jack's reaction was when you went to Bucha. We've all heard that word. We know from the media reports and the television and radio reports what it means. You've seen it.
So really there, I think the most poignant bit, it was obviously shocking, but there's a bit in Bucha where the Ukrainians have gathered up all the vehicles that are burnt out, including Russian tanks. And I think that was the most, would just not experienced something like that before. It's that you have the stench of burnt flesh, I think, going up your nostrils. And you're seeing, you know, cars with children's seats in. You're seeing cars with children written in the front in Ukrainian, all with bullet holes riddled in there. You know, and there is a silver lining in a sense, because some of the locals are returning and they are starting to sweep up the glass and return. But you're seeing, you know, complete blocks of flats destroyed, children's toys burnt to a crisp. And this was a completely unprovoked attack on a civilian area. There was no need for the Russians to hit Bucha. We were told by the Ukrainian army that the Russians went in with tanks, and we could see it. They deliberately swerved out their way to run over cars and decimate the area to try and force the local population into surrendering and to try and break the Ukrainians' morale. We were told that the Russians literally carried out a terrorist attack against the people of Bucha for no other reason than to advance their war.
Extraordinary. Thank you for that. Changing tack to end, as it were, on an up note, because when I read the notes, I was actually moved, not just touched, but moved by it. You specifically went there. One group of people that you particularly wanted to try and help were those who have Down syndrome. And in that process, you also ended up doing a lot of frontline work with children who are in orphanages, tragically a number that is growing by the day.
Yes, so actually today we dropped off aid to a group in Poltava called From Down Syndrome Ukraine, sponsored by Ports of Down Syndrome Association and the National Down Syndrome Policy Group. So we dropped off thousands of pounds worth of humanitarian aid and toys, and we're trying to arrange for them to get some medication. Because while there are some food supplies still left in Ukraine, they're really struggling to get things like ibuprofen, paracetamol, just the basic medical necessities they need for day-to-day life. So we're hopefully arranging for that stuff to come to them as well. We also did help some social orphans. So a big problem at the moment is there are orphans in Ukraine who don't have any paperwork, so they're unable to leave Ukraine, and they don't want to get hoovered up into just sort of the European foster system and potentially never see any of their remaining relatives in Ukraine. So what we did for them is we supplied them with battery packs and some clothing and some toys again as well. And we've actually arranged for them to receive clothes from a group inside Ukraine. So a large part of what we've done is actually help connect up the domestic charities who are all operating independently. But because we've driven the length of Ukraine, we've driven from Lviv to Kharkiv yesterday, and we went to the Russian front line. We drove there, sort of spun around because we said we couldn't hang there too long because there's Russian snipers. And we actually swapped out of our main aid vehicle because we've got a vehicle covered in Ukrainian flags, but we went in locals' cars, and I'm glad we did because we've now seen images that the Russians had targeted yesterday aid workers' vehicles. And I've seen images of vehicles with red crosses on riddled in bullets. And we were told 7 people were killed yesterday who were flying to who were trying to flee Kharkiv. And I think, we heard the shelling non-stop when we were there. So we heard, unfortunately, people dying just trying to do what we were doing. The war has calmed down a little bit, but it is very much still there. And there is still a major attack on civilians, which is appalling. There's no excuse for attacks on civilians. I can understand army versus army, but from what we've seen, people have had their lives completely devastated for no reason other than terrorism.
Jack, great talking to you. We've got friends on this programme who've gone out there and done similar things to you. From the city, a friend of mine called Andrew, also Christian buddies of mine. It may be getting a little bit crowded occasionally, but if it's crowded with good people like yourself and your colleagues, we are honoured by what you're doing for people who have caused no offence themselves other than to live in Ukraine. Jack Ross, thank you very much indeed. Vans Without Borders, look it up, see what he's doing, and maybe, see if you can help. Jack, thank you very much indeed. You take care.
Thank you very much.